In the scenic Southern California town of Newport Beach, considered to be one of the most affluent and beautiful places in the country, the politics of managing the city is just as intense as most towns in America. Despite all its beauty, the town is split over many tough issues, ranging from the simple placement of fire rings and rules for off-leash dogs, to more serious issues concerning property rights, increases in taxes, expenditures, and attempts to strip property rights from the people. This November, there will be 3 seats up for grabs, and the stakes for 11-year resident Mike Glenn have never been greater. A self-described activist, owner of a software development company, and webmaster of his website, Save Newport, Glenn has entered the race for city council and has stated he can't sit on the sidelines anymore and is very concerned for the future of his city. An early supporter of Team Newport, who easily won 4 seats during the last election, Glenn has become one of the most vocal critics. He says Team Newport made lots of promises to get elected, yet reversed themselves on many of their most fundamental positions. Since announcing his candidacy about 4 months ago, he says he's been attacked and his reputation smeared in the news. For a young, untested politician with no track record, we were curious as to why this candidate would create so much attention so early in the election cycle. What we discovered may surprise you. So, Mike.
Yes.
So I had a whole bunch of questions I was going to ask you, a lot of questions, and then I read the paper this morning and read Barbara Venetia's column. So let me just repeat it to you, if that's okay, because it's truly bizarre. Glenn is running for District 5 seat in Newport Beach, as is Herdman. According to Glenn, phone surveyors are calling the voters, exclaiming that he has a radical agenda and wants to defund the United States military.
Right.
Really? Now the city council has no power to defund the military, and Glenn says the statement is simply untrue. Quote, this is how you've been quoted, "I've been actively involved in volunteering for veteran events and organizations for years," he tells her. And then Glenn questioned some politicians and operatives to see if they were behind the calls. They said they were not. So what do you think?
They said that they were not. Jeff Herdman is running in that district. Lee Lowry is also running in that district. I questioned Jeff Herdman and Lee Lowry's camps. Both of them denied the allegations. The only people that were not hit negatively in that campaign were Lee Lowry and Will O'Neill, both of which are managed by Dave Ellis. Dave Ellis, though, denies all knowledge of this.
A lot of people that are watching this are not going to understand that relationship. So can you explain the whole deal?
Dave Ellis is a campaign manager.
Okay.
His primary job is land use operator. So he takes land that's either somebody wants to buy it, and he manages the sale mostly from municipalities, or if they have it zoned a particular way, or they want to get building rights for a particular fashion, he goes behind the scenes and makes sure that all of the politicians are on board with that, so that they're able to get as much value as they can out of that. That's how he makes his money.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, someday we're going to have to talk about how everybody sort of makes their money, because it's not understandable to me.
Sure, sure.
Okay,
but to address the issue.
Yes, the issue.
I've worked for years for our veterans, and if it weren't such a personal topic to me, it would be laughable. But to be abundantly clear, it's false.
Yeah. Where did it come from?
Nobody's copying to it. We'll find out when the campaign finance disclosures come that ended on the 30th of last month, and so those should be out the end of this month, and we should be able to find out who paid for that. So that should be entertaining.
It is getting bizarre. I read the whole article. It's pretty good.
Well, I'm happy that they think that it's appropriate to go that negative on me this early. That tells you something.
Yeah, they're afraid of you apparently, right? Or else they wouldn't. I mean, why would they? And to go to this length too. I mean, to something that's so patently false.
And I've got thousands and thousands of pages that I've written on Newport Beach issues on SaveNewport.com.
Yeah.
It's no secret, and they chose something to fabricate rather than go after any of my literally thousands of pages of issues.
Right.
So that tells you something too.
How long have you been doing Save Newport?
About 4 years now, I think, about in that ballpark.
Well, it's interesting because you've got the weather, you've got, I mean, you have all the news. I mean, it's great.
Thank you. It's a lot of effort, but
Yeah.
I'm passionate.
Does anybody else, do any other candidates have anything like that, a newsletter or?
No, it's not as far as I know. I know Lee Lowry has been involved on the state level, mostly with financing campaigns. And Jeff Herdman, I know, was the president of the Balboa Island Improvement Association, which is kind of like a volunteer HOA, promotes the local businesses out there.
Right.
But to my knowledge, that's their where they are.
Okay. So you've made a big move from the peninsula to the island. So, and it's interesting why you did that. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, I did it to comply with the law. We have 60 years ago, there were all of our council members were up in Corona Del Mar, within a very small square block radius. And they weren't listening to constituents. So everybody got rightfully upset about that. So they said, okay, well, we're going to draw some lines here, and you have to live in here, and you have to live over there, and you have to live over that way. So we have a District 1, the peninsula, where I had been living, has already got somebody in there, and they aren't up for re-election for another 2.5 years. But District 5, which is literally there are 0 inches of land between where I lived and my new district. The District 5 was an open seat, and I just really am not comfortable with the way that the city is going, and I didn't want to sit around and wait. There's been too much that has happened in just this last year and a half for me to feel comfortable
Well,
waiting.
let's go over that, because it's interesting that you made that move, because you actually said that you were afraid. I think you were scared or afraid for Newport Beach, I think that you said.
Yes.
So you wanted to have something to say about it before it turned into whatever it is that you're worried about. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, what you've been worried about, what you're scared about,
Sure.
afraid about.
So, like many others, in fact, most of the city, I backed Team Newport. They said the right things. They were again managed by the campaign manager, Dave Ellis. They said that they were going to stop the assaults on property rights, that they were going to lower our taxes, that they were going to tackle the CalPERS and the unfunded pension liabilities. They were going to fix our budget, and they were just going to get government out of our hair. One of their primary issues is that they were going to stop the dock tax. One of the very first things they did when they got into office was they actually voted to validate the dock tax and affirm the dock tax. That was when I started getting concerned. Since then, they decided to go after the property rights of small businesses on Balboa Peninsula. They have attacked other businesses in our harbor. So they've raised our taxes on the parking meters to pay for additional law enforcement officers during the lowest crime rate and the highest dropping crime area in our city's history. Needless to say, that also increases the CalPERS benefits, unfunded pension liabilities. So we've been seeing these types of things. We've got serious issues now with green light being bypassed over in Fashion Island. So essentially,
Explain that. How are they being bypassed?
So I'll go into green light.
Yeah.
Green light is it's a law that was passed. It was a city. Apologize. It's
That's
a
okay.
voter initiative
Okay.
that was passed by the city. So by popular vote, they said, we're sick of all these buildings going up, and what we want to do is just limit growth, not no growth, but limit growth. And so they said we only want 100 new residential units per measured area per 10 years. So call it about 10 new units per year. What happened in Fashion Island is we had hotels, 79 hotel units that were converted into condo units. And the city's general plan, once you amend it, it takes out of that allocation of 100. So theoretically, we should have 21 units that are available. We've got 2 projects going in over there, one with 49 and one with 100 units, both clearly over 21 units.
Right.
So they should be going to a green light vote, which goes to the public to say, hey, is this acceptable to bypass the standard limit? And the public will either say, yeah, we want those projects, or no, that's too much. But the city in one of the most bizarre things that I've heard from the city, and there have been some bizarre things from the city, has said that they amended the general plan without actually amending the general plan, and therefore green light doesn't apply. So they say that those 79 units that were converted from hotels to residential were not converted, and also that they weren't amended to the general plan, but they are definitely condos and not hotels, and they're definitely in the general plan without the general plan being amended. So it's those types of scenarios are very concerning to me. We've seen absolutely nothing that's been delivered that was what was promised, and I was very gung ho about this Team Newport thing, and I written about it. Not just modifying history. It's there. It's in the logs. I wish I could say I wasn't,
Right.
but I was, and they've delivered the opposite of what they promised, and so I'm very concerned.
Do you
about
have
the way
any
the city is going.
explanation for why they made that, complete turn about what they were actually going to do and what's happened?
Well, I think that it comes down to polling. These campaign managers, they do the polling, they find out what people are concerned about, they find out the positions that are the most popular, and then they tell their candidates to take that position. So in Newport Beach, we're a heavily Republican area, we're concerned about property rights, we hate taxes, so the campaign managers say, tell them you're going to lower taxes, tell them you're going to protect property rights, tell them you're going to promote small businesses, tell them you're going to be fiscally responsible. And they tell them that, regardless of what their intent or actual beliefs are, they know what's going to get them elected. So and you'll see it this year with the same candidates that are managed by the same campaign managers will parrot the same things.
Their talking points, right?
Yeah, and you've just got to take that with a grain of salt.
So I guess my next question would be, and I don't know whether you want to answer this at this time or not, but why? Why would they? What is their motivation? So all right, so we're talking about when you say Team Newport, you're talking about Diane Dixon and
Diane Dixon, Scott Piotr, Duffy, and oh goodness, why am I missing Kevin Muldoon's name?
yeah, right. Why are you? So,
Yes.
so I don't know whether you want to answer that right now or not, but what is their motivation for doing it? I mean, so they decide they're going to run, right? And they promise things that you think that they actually believe in. I kind of believed in all of that, and
Right.
As much as I knew of it, and then they just make that turn. Nothing's changed. The people still want those things, right?
Right. Well, I think you need to look at the motivation of the people that get them elected. You need to look at the motivation of their campaign manager. Dave Ellis, it's no secret, his big money comes from land use. He gets paid to take a property that's zoned one way and zone it another way, or sell a property to or from a municipality. He gets paid to make sure that if you want to build a 100-unit condo, there are no conflicts with green light,
Right.
and that's the kind of things that we're seeing up there.
Yeah.
So he nominates people that he feels comfortable with. He's got basically the entire council. Let's look at the council makeup. We've got, aside from Duffy, who's a great guy, Duffy.
Let's just say they're all nice people.
They are all nice people.
And then we'll go on
And
from there.
everybody's view is different.
Right.
My dad used to say, if anybody tells you that they agree with you 100%, they're either lying or not
Yeah,
paying
right.
attention.
Right.
But
Exactly.
they're all nice people. But their views and their motivations are different. So if you look at their working history and what they've built their careers off of, we've got Scott Piotr, architect, former planning commissioner. So clearly he's worked with the big builders. We've got Diane Dixon, who literally was an employee of the Irvine Company. We've got Kevin Muldoon, worked with Bob McCaffrey and Dave Ellis on the dock tax thing as a property rights lawyer. We've got Tony Petros, whose job is telling people where they can put sidewalks and how many parking spots they need per building. We've got Keith Curry, whose job is literally to put cities in debt and manage their debt for them. So we've got Ed Selich, who is a builder himself. So when we look at the composition of the council, you can't be too surprised that green light's being bypassed.
Yeah, that's truly interesting. So I was going to ask you about the ring situation and
The fire rings?
the fire rings,
Yes.
and I was going to ask you about the dog.
I'd be happy to answer.
okay,
Yeah,
great. 'Cause-
I was a very strong vocal advocate for keeping the fire rings. I went to tons of meetings and did tons of surveys and forms and mailers and collecting of signatures. Um, they're a unique piece of history here in Newport Beach, and for the people that choose to live by fire rings, they choose to live by fire rings. And the people that choose to live by Dog Beach, they chose to live by Dog Beach. It's not something that sprung up over the last year or two.
Yeah.
These are things that have been there forever. They're amenities that the public enjoys, and people chose to live by them. Now, clearly, if you were to open up your blinds and see people enjoying the beach, or open up your blinds and see a private beach, well, we all know which one's going to be selling for more. So I see the reason why people are trying to destroy these things, but it's just not right.
So what is what's the resolution for the dog? Because I don't really know. What is the resolution for the dog beach? Is that going to remain?
It is not officially done yet, but all signs are pointing to the fact that it will become a legal entity. Yes.
Okay, and the rings? They
The-
changed the rings.
The rings, they split them. We lost about half of them, and which was really irritating to me, because that was another thing that the council said that they were all for, was keeping the fire rings.
Right.
So they compromised, and they said, well, how about if we get rid of half of them? But we didn't need to compromise. There's a Air Quality Control Management District, AQMD, and then we have the California Coastal Commission. Now, the California Coastal Commission's job is to maximize beach access. So whatever it takes to get more people out to the beach is basically what they're for. AQMD wants clean air. AQMD and California Coastal Commission disagreed on whether or not they wanted fire rings. And there is some ambiguity over which one of these guys trumps the other one.
Yeah.
And instead of saying in Newport Beach, you guys sorted out in a legal battle, we just said, how about we come to this compromise? Frankly, California Coastal Commission is a state agency. AQMD is a local agency. I think California Coastal Commission trumps AQMD. Besides, AQMD has come out with absolutely no adequate measurements to say how unhealthy these fire rings are. Now, are they unhealthy? Yeah, they're probably unhealthy. Is car exhaust unhealthy? Yeah, it's probably unhealthy. But there's a balance here between quality of life and a life worth living. And I think the fire rings meet that balance.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I live right down there by the fire. Not by the fire ring, so I'm not affected by them. But I used to come down as a kid. It's great to have that smell in the air.
Right.
So you're constantly, not constantly, but one of your main issues are property rights. And so maybe you can explain how our property rights are being, taken away.
Yeah, absolutely. So what got me
Imposed
involved
upon.
with politics to begin with is my business partner has a dock that's attached to his house. Now, a dock adds about $1 million to a house. So when they took 850 docks out of Newport Beach, they obliterated about $1 billion of home equity, just gone, vanished. And one of my friends was affected by that. So, needless to say, with that amount of money that they took from him, as well as everybody else, created a personal impact on me. And that's how I started getting involved. So I went to the dock tax meetings, and of course they don't have just one meeting for the dock tax. There's other things involved there. So then I'd see some other thing and I'd say, well, that's not right. I'm going to start going to those meetings too. That led on and on. Now I'm going to all the meetings. So that's how I got
Do you have
started.
time to work?
Barely. Yeah, let's not talk about that. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a great balance. So we've got a great team, and they're able to largely self-manage. So I got started with the assault on property rights as the dock tax, and they are a piece of property value according to the Orange County assessor, who sets property value. And so we have a major issue with that, and continue to have a major issue with that, because the current council got in and affirmed the dock tax. The other thing that happened is the newly elected mayor at the time, I'm sorry, she wasn't a mayor at the time, a newly elected councilwoman at the time, Diane Dixon, decided that she wanted to set additional regulations and restrictions on places that were open past 11 p.m. We've got a 100-year history of places that are out here open past 11 p.m. We started with sailors and fishers and shipmen. That is Newport Beach. And people build their businesses and buy their buildings based on the revenue streams that come after that timeline. And so by taking that, let's say you have a building, and I come in and I say, I want to open a restaurant, we're going to serve soup until 2 a.m. Well, my revenue stream is obviously going to be up until 2 a.m. So you can charge me an appropriate amount of rent for the appropriate amount of what you could get other people for that same 2 a.m. permit that you own. I don't own that, you own that. Well, if they eliminate that property right, your revenue stream goes down. And so my rent, in turn, has to go down. Well, if somebody wants to buy your property, the worth of your property has also gone down because you can't get that revenue from it. So it lowers your property value and your neighbors because if they use you as a comp. So it is a stripping of property rights when you start saying that to be able to do the same thing that you were doing before, you now need to do X, Y, Z, and the other thing.
What would you say, though, to those people that, have purchased houses around in that area, which I think is like mostly around the Newport Pier? I think
Sure.
that's what we're talking about, right? And there have been some new places, but there also been some old Cassidy's is still there. I mean, there have been some Woody's and all that, right? So what would you say to those people that live around there that are like, can't sleep? I mean, on Saturday and Sunday night, or maybe not Sunday, but Saturday night, Friday night, it's tough.
Well, they should definitely work with the local establishments. I hate to say it, but it's kind of like moving next to a fire ring. If you buy a place that's on top of a bar and then you get upset that you're on top of a bar, you gotta realize what you got yourself into. Now, if it's a new place that has opened up or an old place that's gotten louder, that's clearly a new infringement on your property rights and the way that you live, and that's problematic. But I don't think that anybody has the right to move in somewhere and then demand that everybody change their ways. So it's a tough situation, but I think it's fairly cut and dry. Even though it's highly emotional.
Yeah, it is emotional, but I haven't heard much about it lately, so maybe that time has passed. I don't know.
I think that once we got all of the restaurant owners involved, that they were able to better communicate directly with the residents as well. So I think that in a weird sense of irony, that threat has actually helped the community relations.
Right. So where do you see Newport going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I hope that we get our budget under control because we've got a CalPERS liability problem that will send us into a very steep downward spiral in about 8 years. And so that is my number one concern.
What do you think should be done?
Well, I think that we should have a multi-pronged approach. One is we've got one of our highest interest rates are on CalPERS pension, unfunded CalPERS pension liabilities. So if you've got a credit card and you've got a 2% and you've got a credit card with a 5% interest rate, you're not going to pay the 2% down. You're going to go after the 5. And that's what we need to do with CalPERS. We need to start paying it down. We need to aggressively start paying it down. We need to start limiting our exposure we've been growing departments under this current situation. And we don't need to grow departments. There are plenty of places to cut that won't affect, we don't need to fire anybody. Just attrition alone will allow us to cut. One of my plans that I've been...
And get pensions.
and get pensions. But we have hired these people with the promise of pensions. And we do need, as long as they're meeting their job requirements, we need to honor our commitment. It's not fair and it's not right to say that we're going to give you this offer and allow you to base your entire life around the offer that we've given you and then yank it out from underneath you. So I am not a fan of going in there with an axe. Now, when it comes to streamlining things, well, first, also with simple attrition, in the next 10 years, we can trim our entire staff by 20%. That's with attrition alone. That's not canning in a single person. But there are some real availability there for streamlining. Our planning department, I don't know if you've been in there before. It's filled with people waiting around with physical papers in their hands, waiting to turn them into somebody to get physical papers back. This is something that should all be done online, or at least have the capability of being done. But it doesn't have the capability. There is no option for that. That would eliminate so much manpower on our side and streamline the processes for people that want to re-architect their homes just by magnitudes. Another situation that we have here is we've got our water. Newport Beach is a really unique place. We've got our water from 3 different sources, depending on where you live. If you live over on a little sliver of Irvine Avenue, about 8% of our water comes from Mesa water. We also have a municipal water supply run by the city of Newport Beach, and we have Irvine Ranch
where does
Water
that water
District.
come from?
Newport Beach comes from the state supply. So we basically tap into the state supply as well as the county recycling plant, and we blend them all together, and then we spit it out of your faucet.
Okay, good to know.
And it's a fairly complicated way of coming to the rates that we have, because the recycled water has one rate that's significantly lower than the state rate. State rates, water is measured by an acre foot. So picture about 3/4 of a football field as an acre, 1 foot high with water. It's also coincidentally about the same amount of water that a family of 4 uses in a year. So that's what an acre foot is.
Yeah.
And without getting too off track, an acre foot in our current municipal water supply is about $500 blended after you mix it all together and it comes out the pipe.
Yeah.
Mesa water has water for about $300. So we could nearly cut our water supply cost in half by switching to Mesa water. The pipes are already connected, we just need to turn them on. Now we would cut our water supply in half, but in addition to that, it gives us cleaner water. We have a 1,200-year supply right underneath us. So if we don't figure water out in 1,200 years, we've got bigger problems. So
Yeah.
I'll call it unlimited. But it brings us off the state supply too, so we're no longer water rationed.
What's keeping us from doing that?
Politics.
Why?
Without getting into speculation that will be argued ad nauseum,
Right.
I've got my own opinions on it. But another part of this, so not only would we cut the cost of municipal water in half, not only would we get cleaner water with an unlimited supply, no rationing, but we have 19 people in our water department that could be repositioned into other areas of the city. And we could shrink 19 positions right there as other people, of course, follow. We're not going to can anybody, but that's a really great other avenue. So there's plenty of ways that we can shrink our entire city's management without getting into a mass firing
Okay,
or
so
anything
if somebody was sitting here that didn't have that position, that didn't
Sure.
want to get the Mesa water, what would their reason? I mean, what would their stated reason be? Maybe not the behind the story reason, but their stated reason.
I literally have heard no objections.
Really?
None.
Then why isn't it being done? We don't know.
Because there is a battle for that water supply. Because if the city's going to give away that much of their business, and we've got...
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I get the picture. There's a lot going on here that I'm sort of unaware, that we're all kind of unaware of. So, I think you figure your chances of winning are really pretty good at this point, or at least
I am
decent, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been an activist for many years. People know who I am. I'm a quantified source. I've had, like, again, thousands of pages of my positions that I've taken over the years that nobody has really taken issue with, except for the council, because I take issue with them. And I have not heard anybody from the citizen side say, Mike, what a terrible idea, this dog beach.
Yeah.
One person. But for the most part, people know me, they trust me. My name's out there. I've been doing well fundraising. And these negative attacks that are coming out so viciously and so early are actually solidifying people around me. So I don't want to be overconfident. I'm certain that I will see some significant fundraising from my opponents. One of them that he fundraises on a state and national level. So I don't doubt that he will be able to come up with the funds.
How much does it take now? I'll tell you that it costs about, to run in some zones for the Board of Education, it costs about $40,000 a piece, which is stunning to me. It's just stunning. So for the
Team Newport alone last year, not counting the people who didn't win, just the ones that won, spent over $900,000 to get elected.
Okay, I'm really bad at math. What is that individually?
It's about 200, a little over 200,000 per person.
200,000 a person.
Yeah.
Lord, wow, that's a lot. It's a lot to raise.
Yeah.
So, Mike,
Yes.
so I guess I want to ask, which is sort of what I ask everybody. So, why should anybody vote for you? Why should we vote for you?
If you're sick and tired of politicians that are promising you the same thing over and over, and once they get into office, they give you the same thing over and over, and it's the opposite of what they say. If you're tired of the increasing taxes and tired of the assaults on small businesses and property rights, if you're tired of the wild fiscal irresponsibility that's going on in our city, then I'm your guy. If you're okay with it, then don't bother voting for me.
Thanks, Mike.